I want to make a bet with you with these three cards. Find the ace over here. Of course, you can find it now, but can you find it now? I think it's pretty tough. Here's the bet. If you can guess the ace, I will give you 500 rupees. And I need you to bet 100 rupees from your side. And if you win, you get 500. But if you lose, I get your entire house for free. You see what I just did over here? You thought this is a pretty good bet, 100 रुपए ही तो है, कर लेते हैं, risk is small. But when I showed you the actual risk over here, this reward seemed very small. Maybe your father's and mother's house is worth, I don't know, 5 CR or 3 CR or 1 CR. With whatever the number is, the reward is way too less. And the measure of risk and reward is called the Sharpe ratio in the stock market. The Sharpe ratio for this, so the Sharpe ratio for this type of, and I'll call this a bet, is going to be 0.0000 something 1. And you are looking for a mutual fund whose Sharpe ratio is actually greater than 1, which means the risk and reward is actually balanced. This was just one metric. I will tell you exactly how to select any equity fund, and all it will take is exactly 2 minutes of your time to go through this checklist and find whether this is the right equity mutual fund or not. So, before we begin, hit that subscribe button right now, say something nice in the comments right now, hit that like button, and let's start with step number 1. To know where the ace really was, watch the video till the end. We've revealed it in the behind the scenes at the end of the video. So see you then. Let's start with step number 1 of analyzing mutual funds. The Amphi chief once said the average holding period of a mutual fund is just 2 years. No wonder no one's making money in this, because no one's holding these these funds. Anyway, to analyze a mutual fund, we need to look at 3 things. That's performance, cost, and risk. So we'll do that same framework over here like we did in the debt mutual fund wala video. You can check that out over here. Let's begin with performance. So I'm using advisorcoach.com, and over here all I'll do is I've clicked on rolling returns. We can see that we have 3-year rolling returns here, right here, called minimum, medium, and maximum. But what the hell is a rolling return? I'll quickly explain this. So let's suppose we're analyzing the returns for 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. You get the idea, all the way ahead. For a 3-year rolling return, we look at the average of these 3 years. Let's call it R1. Then I look at the next 3 years average. Let's call it R2. So on and so forth. We will then take out an actual average called the rolling return 3 years. Now what this has actually done, it has taken the excesses. Maybe this year the excess was very high and 2011 was very flat and 2012 was really down. And taken those excesses and averaged it out and given you a true picture of what to expect. The problem is when you go on the internet, you see the last 1 year returns of a small cap fund and say, damn, I'll make 50% every year. But that's simply not true. A better average or a better way to set expectations कि यार ये mutual fund कितना पैसा शायद दे सकता है, that average is the rolling 3 years return. And here we can see the minimum is 5.92, almost 6%. The maximum is 25.7, almost 26%. And the median is about 15.85%. So you look at the median, that is 15.85%, and set expectations to this. If you ask me, expect 2% less, so you can be pleasantly surprised in the future, and that's where your expectation should be. Not the last 1 year, not the last 2 years, but the median of the 3-year rolling return. But if you're doing an SIP, which you most likely are, wait till the end of the video and we'll tell you how to calculate returns for an SIP mode. But until then, let's move on to the next metric. In fact, let me write all the metrics down here. The first is going to be rolling returns. The next is going to be your expense ratio. This is the cost you will pay for the mutual fund manager to actually manage your account. Then there is something called the Sharpe ratio, which we discussed at the opening of this video, which is a measure between the risk taken for the reward that you are likely to make. And then there's, of course, alpha. So rolling returns we can see over here is 15.85%. Let me write that down. 15.85%. So ideally we'd like to compare this to something, and we know that the index roughly does about 12%. So 12% CAGR for Nifty is what we're comparing over here. In this case, this is slightly high. Remember, whenever you see any returns higher than the benchmark, there is higher risk. Otherwise, that extra return won't happen. Next is the expense ratio. This is actually really important because you're paying this to the fund manager, and he's charging this to actually manage your account. And whether the market goes up, whether the market goes down, they still get paid, which is completely fine, but you should know how much you're paying them. It's called as TER, or total expense ratio. It's basically a fees. This should be around 1%, 1.2% maybe. This is 1.55%. I would say it's a little on the expensive side. It's not too expensive, but if you're investing in, say, an index fund, the index fund will probably charge much, much less than this. So I would say it's slightly on the expensive side, but it's a fair charge for the category you're investing in. That is, this is an ELSS fund. And although it is completely legal and correct for them to do it because they have to manage risk and ideally give you alpha, which is little more returns than Nifty. Well, ideally, little more returns than Nifty. So let's understand how much they charge and what this particular fund is charging. Here we can see that the total expense ratio is 0.77%. So 0.770% is the expense ratio. We'll come back to whether this is high or low, but anything below 1% is actually pretty good. There are some funds charging up to 1.5, even 2%. So this sounds okay. Let's look at Sharpe ratio. And as you might remember, anything below 1, and you'll remember our example we showed you, is too much risk and not good. Anything at 1 or slightly above 1, that means the risk management is actually pretty good. So over here we can see that the Sharpe ratio is 0.75. Let me write this down. 0.75. This is actually not good at all, especially if you compare it to the category average. Over here, the category average is 1.3. 1.3. I have to say this again. Anything below 0 is not good. So this is actually not good. And the category average is 3. And we are much below that, which proves that other funds in the same category are doing much better, probably making better returns and taking lesser risk. Not good. And finally, we have alpha. Now remember, you are investing in an active fund, such as like this, where a fund manager is trying to actively beat the index. Index is the benchmark. So let's suppose this is Nifty. So I'll call this NF. And this is what Nifty is doing. You ideally want your fund, and I'll call this, well, fund, to beat Nifty by a certain amount and actually grow. So the difference between the return of Nifty and the return of the fund is called the alpha. So if this is 8% and this is 10%, the alpha over here is 2%. And you basically say, to earn this extra 2% over the index is why I've selected a fund, and the fund is actively managing my portfolio. The alpha for this fund over here is an abysmal minus 7.41%. This is actually pretty bad. Alpha should always be a positive number, because it should be better than the index. And over here we can see that the index gave, and I'll put this as versus, the index gave a plus 14.93% in this period. So clearly, if someone had invested in Nifty, he would have done a better job. I actually looked year-wise and I saw that 2 years, 2021 and 2022, didn't do so well, which is why this number is here. But before that, the fund did okay. So this is actually a red flag, and I'll mark this as, red, not good. You can use this to understand any mutual fund. Just make sure you compare apples to apples. don't compare a large cap fund to, say, a small cap fund or an ELSS fund to something else completely. Do it in the same category and compare them with each other. I would also say if you're new, don't do something like small caps, etc. I know it feels awesome, it feels like you're taking higher risk, but for most people who are just starting out, that extra risk isn't really worth it. If you want to have some fun, you could give like a 5% exposure to, say, small cap funds if you think that's interesting, but go more towards the mid cap, large cap area first. If you found this interesting, say something in the comments that you liked it, because of many people say this and they say it again and again, especially with long, nice messages. Then it tells our team to create more content like this. Hit that subscribe button. Say something nice in the comments. Hit that like button and see you in the next video. Jwal. ये वाला mid. Swati loses. Tirkush. नहीं कोई. Oh! कौन जीता फिर? बीच वाला? तू बीच बोला था? दिलकुश बीच बोला? नहीं, ये भी बोला था. अरे बोला था इसने भाई. अरे 500 रुपए दो इसको. तुम लोग अपना अपना घर निकालो चलो.